YSK, we can fight back against tip culture by paying with cash. Why YSK tip culture is insidious. Buy a muffin and the shop asks for 15. A coffee? 20. They hand you a lunch at a food truck and want 25. Problem is that most of the entities involved in a transaction like tips. Employees benefit because they get more money. Shops benefit by paying their employees less and putting the burden for paying their employees onto customers. Credit card and payment companies benefit by larger transaction fees. The one group that suffers is the customer. Of course, the customer can choose not to tip, but that can be awkward and a hassle with modern payment systems. More importantly, the parties that benefit from tip culture don't really suffer when someone chooses to tip. There is a way to make them suffer. Pay with cash. When you pay with cash, employees aren't usually going to ask for extra money for a tip. Shops hate people who pay with cash because it slows down checkout and they have to deal with the overhead of handling cash. Credit card and payment companies suffer the most because they get zero transaction fees when you pay with. Avoid the awkwardness of entering no tip by paying with cash. Save money by not tipping on trivial transactions. Give the tip culture beneficiaries a reason to change their ways. Of course, if there is proper service like at a sit-down restaurant, you should absolutely tip generously in that scenario. Real wait staff earns their 18.20. But someone handing you a muffin? Nope. Push them to push their employer to pay them properly. Shops like people who pay cash since they don't have to pay the 3-5 credit card processing fee. The servers will still expect tips since they don't care how you pay, either way. Went to a concert in Raleigh this past week and bought a psychedelic furs t-shirt. Plopped my card in the electronic feed and the tip prompt came up. Yeah, like I'm going to tip for an already overpriced t-shirt. $35 for the guy to spend 3 seconds plopping it in a bag. I'm a fool for even buying it, but after a couple of drinks and a great concert, I was feeling good. I wonder how many people just automatically hit the tip. Just say no. You have a choice to tip or not regardless of your payment method. Don't want to tip? Simply don't. It's a free country. You can also just not tip and not feel bad about it. This is a treatment for a symptom, not for the sickness. Tips are bad and should not exist in any form. I live in France where tips are mostly non-existent. You pay the exact price given by the shop when you enter it, and hassle does not exist. This is better for the customer, obviously, but tips are horrible for workers, not customers. Tips create workers' precarity. They give shops an excuse as to not give a good salary to their workers. This is the real problem. We can fight back tips culture by forcing shops to give better salary so that tips are no longer a necessity for the working class. This is political. This is not what shops owners will want. And this is obviously a real problem. Not tipping can be awkward or a hassle. Huh? No, it isn't. Just don't do it. Simple. Man, I work in retail helping make millions for a store that gives me crumbs. I am constantly going out of my way to help people look up or retrieve items they need, giving smiles and friendly service, listening to endless boring stories from people that have no one to talk to, helping disabled and elderly. Nowhere in the process of my day do I receive a tip. The whole idea that only certain work is tipped because wages and service is asinine. I do more for people than any waitstaff at any restaurant I've ever been at. Employers, pay your people, period. Don't leave it up to everyone else. Tipping is out of control and they want you to feel shame if you don't tip. People need to stop being pushovers because they're afraid to decline the tip when prompted. YSK that you don't have to put a tip on a card payment. I've seen more anti-tipping YSKs on this subreddit in the past 6 months than I had in my 11 years of having this account. What's happening? Did someone with a podcast make a big deal out of this recently or something? YSK how to just say no like an adult. You don't need an excuse. Is tipping at coffee shops really new? What about tipping your bartender? How about just increase their pay by 18-20? I got a better solution. If a place is 1 iota off about tipping or paying, don't go there. Fuck eating out. Tipping has spilled over to Europe now too. UK restaurants, particularly in places where tourists go, have added 12.5-15 tips to the total bill. In Greece, Spain and other tourist hotspots, servers are expecting tips too. Tipping will only become more common, not less. Just stop being a child and get over the awkwardness and just hit 0. Geez man, Redditors really are helpless sometimes. Guys, just don't tip anywhere other than a restaurant and don't feel awkward about it. Just put no tip 0 on the touch screen for Christ's sake. Who cares what the cashier thinks? I'm European and I might not understand. Can someone explain me why I should tip for something when I don't want to? If I don't feel the need to tip cause I don't get appropriate service, I don't tip. Is it some social pressure kind of thing? I had a shitty boss once that made us give our tips to him. He would keep most of it and give you like a fraction of what you making in tips. I remember when the staff stood up to him about it and he pretty much called us all lazy liberals. Yes, he was a Trump supporter. I have encountered more and more places that don't accept cash. I think it started during the pandemic, but a lot of stores kept the rule. I thought they'd have to accept legal tender, but apparently they don't have to. I'm living in Germany and recently went to a vegan burger place at a shopping mall food court. It was like your typical McD, KFC or BK but with very expensive vegan burgers. You had to use one of those terminals to order, and at the end when I went to pay it was asking me what tip I wanted to give and made it difficult to opt out. I don't think I've ever gotten this mad at something. Tip for what? Doing all the work myself? It's not like the food is cheap or anything. Fuck me. It's gonna ask you a question. In the drive-thru. You want me to tip for something in a drive-thru? So the question asking me for a tip in a drive-thru? What's the tip for? Who does it go to? Is it weird asking for a tip in the drive-thru? It's gotta be awkward, right? Like what is it for, since I'm already paying for my item you get a paycheck to hand it to me? Is a waitress bringing it out or something, because I don't have time for that. Do y'all even have waitresses here? Oh, press no tip. Didn't realize I was holding up the line. I don't tip unless I am getting a service like a haircut or sit-down diner. I won't be changing these habits. If it's a required tip I would just stop going to the business. There's nothing that is that important to me that I feel a forced tip is justified. When you tip on those machines you don't even know where the money is going. It's not going to the employee that rang you up, I promise you. It's likely going right into the manager's pockets or the CEO's pockets. I've heard several people say this. If you really want to give a tip I would tip in cash the person who did work for you. This way you can be sure they get it. You could also just not tip. It's a disgusting practice that unfortunately is beginning to be exported from America to where I live. I've gotten over the awkwardness of not tipping pretty quickly since a basic Caesar salad started costing $18.20. YSK, you can fight tip culture by just pressing no tip on the damn iPad. Make your own food at home, that'll show M. Not awkward at all. I don't tip on a credit card machine, ever. Unless I am sitting down and being waited on or being provided a service like a haircut or something similar, I won't tip. Just because you handed me a product from behind the counter does not justify a tip. Or just hit no. If you aren't strong enough to click no tip, how will you survive the counting out your change king? Or don't be a bitch and feel pressured to tip. Be confident when you press the no tip button if you didn't receive any extra service. I never realized how much money I was spending on stupid crap until I forced myself to pay with cash only for a period of time. It's a lot easier buying something when you're swiping a card rather than handing them a crisp $20 bill. Really made me rethink a lot of my buying decisions.